arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this part of the meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consented to being filmed by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. And this is important. I thought it was just me, but it's not apparently just me. Can I remind members to speak clearly into the microphones, to not put their papers over the microphones, and I'll now move to the agenda. I'm just going to change the order a little bit so we give our member of the public time to ask his questions. But item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Austin Davis, Councillor David Napier, Councillor Jen Overett, Councillor Ross Piper, Councillor Ollie Walters and Councillor Terence Carter.
Thank you. Declarations of interest by Councillor Millen.
Sorry, can we add Councillor David Bradbury is there as well, because he's unable to be here.
Of course, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Declarations of interest by councillors.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to have a word with mainly Suffolk County Council members here tonight. You have, of course, already have a dispensation in place to speak, but just a word of caution when it comes to the debate part, that obviously while we're here, we're not taking a decision on the devolution deal. Suffolk County Council will eventually do that, and you need to make sure that you don't make any strong statements around that, which could mean that you're predetermined. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. MC 2343. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of February 2024 for accuracy only. I refer you to the amended paragraphs in the tabled papers. The minutes have been amended accordingly. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. Just to register for the record that whilst the minute reads that I voted for the amendment, in fact, it was my intention to vote against the amendment. So I'd just like that recorded for these minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. That would be noted.
Are there any further issues? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Weller. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Matheson. I'm going to do this by a show of hands. All those in favour? That is carried. MC 2344, Chair's announcements. I refer you to paper MC 2344 for noting. Thank you. I'll now ask Councillor Mellon for his leader's announcements.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to say that Mid-Suffolk District Council, along with our Labour colleagues, was named UK Council of the Year at the IESE Public Sector Transformation Awards. It's a great recognition for everyone involved in the organisation, not just this administration, but all those involved over the last decade or so. So congratulations to our staff, to all councillors across the political spectrum and to all the partner organisations that we work with. The Bramford to Twinstead project, councillors will be aware that National Grid's long-running plans for more electricity pylons between Bramford and Twinstead. The planning inspector has just completed examination of the proposals and is now preparing a report for the Secretary of State to make a final decision. Now, whilst Mid-Suffolk District Council recognises the need to upgrade the grid to meet net zero targets, we have objected to the plans which have significant shortcomings. Not enough has been done to mitigate impacts on the countryside and local communities. And we are also very concerned about the cumulative impacts of this and other large-scale energy infrastructure projects, such as the new Norwich to Tilbury pylon line, as well as other emerging projects. So we will continue to raise the concerns of our communities. I'm pleased to report that work has started on creating fully accessible toilet facilities at Stradbroke Swimming Pool and Fitness Centre, and the Food Museum at Stowmarket will also be home to Changing Places facilities as part of an ongoing development. Now, these facilities go a long way to ensure our district is as accessible and inclusive as possible. The Musical Memories project. Over the last few months, through our partnership with Orchestras Live, we've been able to bring musicians from the Britten Sinfonia into our communities. They've held a series of workshops where they've performed for and also created music with older residents and those with long-term conditions. So on Monday, I was able to attend the final event in this project, which was one of 2 concerts in Stowmarket, bringing all the participants together. I have to say it was a truly remarkable experience to have world-class musicians playing for and singing with residents and their support workers. So a big thank you to the officers who made this project so special. And then lastly, working with partners. The administration continues to meet with key stakeholders to discuss our plans, to listen and to look for ways we can work together for the benefit of our residents. Yesterday, Councillor Eburn and myself met with local representatives of the National Farmers Union. Councillor Weller has been working with neighbouring councils on the funding bid for a large-scale environment project. And next week we are meeting with representatives of Stowmarket Town Council. We look forward to all these partnerships bringing benefits to those involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Melton. Do we have any questions for clarification? Councillor Linder.
Thank you for your good presentation. There's only one point I would like to raise, and that is the pylon issue. Would you be able to more forcefully ask for these electrical conduits to be put underground instead of on pylons? That would be, I think, very much appreciated by most of the inhabitants here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linder. That's a good point. We did debate that issue, I think, was it back in last summer when we were at Elmswell, and the council did come together to agree to object to those proposals. So we're not the decision-making body here. All we can do is put our views forward, and I think we've done that quite forcefully.
Thank you very much. Item 7.
Councillor Whitehead.
Oh, beg your pardon, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of areas of perhaps explanation further in terms of your working with partners section. You state that Councillor Weller has been working with neighbouring councils on a funding bid for a large-scale environment project. Seems a rather enigmatic sentence. Perhaps you could give further details there. And also, in terms of your meeting and with yourself and Councillor Eburn with the National Farmers Union, did those discussions discuss the proliferation of large-scale solar farms in the area? And if so, was there a consensus or meeting of minds on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Without going into full details of the project that Councillor Weller has been working on, and officers have too, we have been working with Norfolk County Council on something called Forest for the Nation bid. We're at an early stage of that process, but the bid has been submitted, and we hope that we may get through to the next stage, which would be quite helpful. But that would it's a large-scale project with government money. Just on the yes, we did discuss solar farms yesterday. Inevitably, there was no, I wouldn't say there was a kind of unanimity on it, but I think we certainly discussed the fact that for farmers, with uncertainty about incomes from the traditional process of growing crops and animals, if you're offered £1,000 or £1,200 an acre for 30 years, it's very difficult to turn that sort of money down.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mellon. Are there any other points of clarification? Right. Item 7, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council Procedure Rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Now, item 8, questions by the public in accordance with Council Procedure Rules. I refer you to the questions in the tabled papers. I would now like to ask Mr. Stephen Wells to read out his first question. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask these questions. So, question 1. Given that the Green Administration has created the Mid-Suffolk Plan stating, and I took this from District Councillor report presented by Councillor Penny, environmental and social responsibilities is at the heart of everything that we do. Helping to create a thriving and resilient community or communities in Mid-Suffolk, this encompasses housing and infrastructure, resilience, community well-being and environmental sustainability. A key principle is to work collaboratively with communities. Can the Cabinet member explain how increasing the charge to parish councils for emptying dog bins, considering some parish councils' very finite budgets, without consulting with them, is not contradictory to the Mid-Suffolk Plan heart? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Eburn, Cabinet Member of Finance, to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Firstly, thank you very much for coming to the council meeting this evening to ask a question. It's always good to receive questions from members of the public, and as I understand you're a parish councillor, I'm sure you appreciate this too. Firstly, just to note that I understand that you're in your ward, you have 2 district councillors, which is Councillor John Whitehead and Councillor Dave Penny, and you get a joint report. It's not just by Councillor Penny, so just so we can make that clear. And yes, we have stated that there should be greater collaborative working with all parishes, organisations, businesses and residents in our district, as our plan agreed in January this year. And as a new Green Administration, we've been working hard with council officers to get a plan in place for this. Officers are committed to supporting parishes where they can, so including, they did offer a review of the number and type of bins in your area, and I don't know if your parish council took that up, but it's something that was offered. Plus, they've offered to help rationalise areas of expenditure. We've also set up Pride in Your Place grants, and again, I hope your parish council has taken advantage of this. As part of our work, we want to hear from parishes about the services you might want to take on yourselves, those that you would want to do more of, or ones that you don't think you should be doing at all. And we're expecting to have a greater dialogue with parishes well in advance of the budget setting process in the forthcoming financial year, and hopefully we can see you during that period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Mr. Wells, we'd like to ask a supplementary question.
Thank you. First of all, if I may just clarify, I'm not here to represent the parish council tonight. I'm here as an individual. And secondly, I was clear in the question that it was presented by Councillor Penny, not that Councillor Penny had sole ownership of the report that he presented us with. Supplementary question, if I may. Given that this is an exercise to help balance budgets and costs, and it appears to be part of the wider scheme, including refuse and bulk loads, etc. And of course, this would be a fully thought through policy. Can I ask, as the supplementary question, what is the elasticity of demand? Because of course, as prices go up, use of services go down. And therefore, what is the anticipated fall-off of parishes, for example, utilising dog bins? And what is the anticipated knock-on effect, both for the environment and the environmental health of the public, should dog waste start to be more propagated across the parishes. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that supplementary, and I apologise. I didn't mean to show you as a representative of the parish council. I just knew that you were a parish councillor, and therefore, that would be a factor in kind of the information and so on and so forth. I'm not aware of research that's been taken to look at any kind of drop-ins in the usage, as it were, but given that a lot of the services that we provide are aimed at full cost recovery, therefore if there's more or less, that would even out in terms of the costs for the council. But I think I just want to reiterate that what we're really looking at is what services parishes, organisations want to be looking at. Some parishes might, have volunteers that look after their bins themselves. For example, just taking bins. There might be other services, such as managing green spaces, that they might want us as a district council to look after, but they might want to do that themselves. And so I think we need to keep have that dialogue and just see where we go from there in terms of what services are required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eban. Mr Wells, would you like to read out your second question?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that answer, Councillor. Question 2. As a council taxpayer, it is very concerning that it appears the council hugely underestimated and miscalculated the level of borrowing needed to fund the capital programme 23-24, resulting in borrowing what appears to be 335% more than initially intended, and as such, can the Cabinet Member for Finance reassure we as the public that the numbers for this budget are correctly worked through, robust, reliable, and have been checked to make sure the amounts are correct, mitigating the risk of getting it so wrong again? Thank you.
Mr Wells. Councillor Eban.
Thank you very much for your question. I'm really pleased that members of the public actually look at the budget and really look at the details, so that's really heartening. Thank you for that. And first, with regards to the 23-24 budgets, I need to be clear that this wasn't set by this administration, it's set by the outgoing Conservative administration. So funding for the capital programme would have been set then. And similarly, those amounts in the capital programme would have been set against particular projects. But however, in analysing the work expected to take place during 23-24, we found that some projects either did not have the full funding in place, they did not have specific plans to progress during the year, or weren't realistically expected to be achieved during the year, and as such, these capital projects were put back. This means that less borrowing was required in the current financial year than was noted in the budget. And the equivalent funding was therefore carried forward. That effectively is the difference in the figures that you've mentioned. As an administration, we will not put forward capital work that is not fully planned and funded, and we are undertaking further work on this. And it's part of our robust approach in ensuring that we have secure financial practices in place and account to residents for what is being spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eban. Mr Wells, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you.
Finished? Thank you very much, Mr Wells.
Thank you for that answer, Councillor. It's a very interesting response. Given the acknowledgements that some projects are not ever going to be fully funded, or the project amount changes as it goes through implementation and time, I'm sure the Councillor would agree with me that it's important to manage those projects and make tough leadership decisions when necessary. And at the heart of that needs to be accurate information. Of course, bringing together a budget is a complicated process, but in ensuring that you have the correct information, is it not the case that we need to make sure that the numbers add up to start with, and if I may draw you to capital programme 9.1, there's a number of 24,616,000 in total as expenditure. Yes, the income that's detailed to be covering that amount doesn't equal 24,616,000. Now, of course, it, as I said, is complicated, and as political leaders, needs to be reviewed before presentation. So, can I ask again, are you absolutely sure that given what I've just read out to you, that the capital programmes that you're lining up for this year are going to be managed, and that we're not going to see another run over of debt or extra borrowing for next year? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. I'm not sure if you misunderstood, but I didn't say about projects that were never going to be fully funded. I said that we had to make sure that projects would be fully funded. And I think with regards to a capital programme, it's interesting in that you look throughout the year, projects come up, there's spending might be needed, different councillors, and we've asked councillors across the council for ideas on where they might want to see investment. So things will change, and things change throughout the year, and as a administration, we're very sensible to that, and we wouldn't just say, no, actually at this date, this is it. We're only going to do these, come up with an idea next month, 6 months, 10 months' time. Sorry, we're not going to consider it. We will be considering different capital projects throughout the year, and we will be assessing those. We don't know what's happening with the economy, with interest rates and so on, so we need to be very, very mindful of that. But I think the core of your question really is whether we are responsible financially, and I think I can say absolutely yes, and completely robust in how we question what we're doing with public money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eburn. Thank you very much, Mr. Wells, for being patient and your questions. Thank you. I'll just flip off item 9, questions by councillor in accordance with council procedure rules.
Non-received, Chair.
Non-received, thank you. Now, Councillor Hicks, I do apologise, but I rearranged things a little because Mr. Wells was waiting outside. Yes, I'm afraid so. Right, we go back to item 6, to debate the proposed Suffolk devolution deal. It's recommended to delegate authority to the leader of the council to collect the views of the council and to respond to Suffolk County Council. Could I have a proposal? Councillor Mellon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose this recommendation and to say a few words in introduction, if that's okay. The proposed devolution deal for Suffolk has been well publicised. There has been a period of engagement, and on Monday, the period of consultation formally opened. And there have been multiple opportunities for members to be briefed on the details of the deal, and we heard, again, a briefing this evening. So can I commend the County Council for their diligence and effort in engagement? Today we have an opportunity to debate the proposals and feed back into the consultation. However, the decision will be made by members of the County Council, who will debate and then vote at a council meeting planned for July. So those of us who are double-hatted, and I think there are 4 of us who are members of both this council and the County Council, we will have a part to play in that decision. I'm sure we'll consider that very carefully. But all of us have an opportunity to feed into the consultation through the council's website or by contributing to the debate today. So this is a slightly unusual format, as having discussed this with the Chief Executive, we agreed that we should not try to narrow down the disparate views of members to a single unified view from Mid-Suffolk, but instead have the debate and aim to capture the wide range of views and opinions that there will inevitably be in this chamber and feed them back. It's also slightly unusual in that we have Councillor Hicks, leader of the County Council, as a member of this council too. I think it's fair to say that he is an enthusiastic advocate for the devolution deal, and I'm sure he will be putting the case at the July County Council meeting. But I think it's important that this council communicates our view, although it will not be the same view, it will not be a single opinion, but I hope that members will take the opportunity to debate this, and I'm happy to propose the recommendation and look for a second.
Councillor Scarf, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very happy to second the recommendation. I think this is a sensible way forward for the District Council to ascertain councillors' views.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Now, we will move straight to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. So, who would like to? Councillor Eburn, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 3 quick points really to make on this. Firstly, I don't believe there's enough funding in this devolution deal. For example, we've heard that there's 5.8 million for regeneration of brownfield sites across 200 in Suffolk. We could sink that easily in 2 in mid-Suffolk alone. Yes, we could get further funding in for that, but certainly not enough to address 200 brownfield sites. And I think that government should be addressing council funding per se first before giving us a few pennies in a devolution deal. And it's urgent need for local government funding that needs to be addressed. Secondly, I believe there's a lack of collaboration in this current proposal with districts and with parishes. The deal is only with Suffolk County Council. Yes, in the deal it says they should collaborate with the districts and boroughs, but there's no absolute commitment that they have to do so, and absolutely no mention of parishes. Devolution should be across all levels of government. And the county are under no obligation to deal with any of these other set levels of government. And I think just to finalise, Chair, it just feels with regards to the difference in deals, we're told if there's a level 3 deal, ultimately we might get a level 4 deal. And to me that's saying, well, you know, vote for this and you'll get jam tomorrow. You know, so I have serious doubts about this deal, and it's not one that I think would be, I think it's being dressed up to be far more than it is. Thank you, Chair.
Well, in response to the question I asked, it kind of sounded like this is a very small percentage of the county budget, and as Councillor Eburn has just said, come for the specifics, and kind of that's initially like when it's a few years down the line and there's inflation, and so that'll be an even smaller part of the council budget. And I don't see how, given that it has potential to introduce a type of politics which puts people, which kind of means people say that they're sick of politics because it potentially adds a more division or a way of kind of there being power held by different places, which lead to a meeting and elsewhere where things aren't passed and there's barriers to it and all that. So I don't see, for the very small amounts in the county council budget that we're talking about overall, the benefits of introducing that dynamic and barriers to kind of efficient governments, given there's already a democratic mechanism that lots of councils use already working in county council.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I share the views of the speakers who've just gone before me, because I think it is a tiny proportion of the total budget for the county council. And Councillor Mellon did say that he thought it had been quite widely publicised. But I have my doubts as to whether the vast majority of the population of Suffolk understand the significance of that tiny proportion of the budget, and whether they, you know, what is the turnout for a county council election when we're just voting for your local division member or whatever the terminology is. And people are going to go to the polls, and do they really understand the significance of voting for the directly elected leader of the council? And we hear from the officers today that if there are political differences between the leader and the majority in the county council, that still seems to be a work in progress. So we don't really know what's going to happen. I think it's a huge step into the unknown for a tiny proportion of the council's budget. So I think it's all a bit of a con by the government. We were also told about examples of where the devolution deal has succeeded, and those examples seem to be in urban environments, which have very different needs and very different demographics to what we've got here in Suffolk. So I don't think that it's right for a rural county like Suffolk. And then we also have this issue about the collaboration, where you're right, other people have said, you know, why are the districts and the parishes not more directly involved in this devolution deal? And the county council are told they should collaborate. Does Suffolk County Council have a good record for collaborating with the districts and the parishes? My opinion is that they do not. So what is going to change with this devolution deal? I don't think it's worth it. I think it is not the right answer for us in Suffolk. Thank you.
Councillor Patchett.
Thank you, Chair. £450 million. Sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds really good to a county council that's got a huge budget deficit. But then you break it down, £16 million a year. Well, okay, less great. And not index linked, well, that's, again, even less great. Let's go back to 1994, 30 years ago. House prices. You could buy a house, average UK house, £51,000. Today, £265,000. There's a thing called inflation. And even a conservative estimate of 2%, I hate using that word, conservative, but a conservative estimate, if they could keep inflation at 2%, would be great. That would be worth about £5.5, £6 million. So your £16 million today is not £16 million at the back end of it. Again, 5.8 million for the 200 brownfield sites. That won't even pay for Fisons in Claydon. So, yeah, the 5.8 million, that's gone straight away, one brownfield site. 500,000 for transport. What will that buy? 2 buses? Excellent. 3 million for efficient homes. Well, just us as a district, we're giving away 2 million. So you spread 3 million amongst the remaining, including us, 3 million. Actually, how far is that going to go? Not very far. Conservative governments don't give out anything for free. They don't just give you £450 million. There's going to be a sting in the tail. We may not know what it is yet, but there's going to be a sting in the tail. Look at the housing revenue account self-funding system. That has completely destroyed our housing revenue account. Look at public sector pensions, which, you know, I'm affected. They said, yeah, here's a new pension. Brilliant, excellent. But it's been deemed illegal because they tried to impose it on judges, and don't try and impose something on a judge because guess what? They'll sue you, and they did, and they won. So, you know, that's being backtracked. I think the public, and I am a member of public, I don't trust this current government. I don't trust they'll do the right thing. The county council is run by the Conservatives. I don't think that they're in good control of this budget. The deficit proves that. I think they're desperately trying to cling on to power, and this 450 million is what they're going to use as a bargaining chip with the public, and I don't think the public are going to be fooled with it. And just for the record, in case you can't tell, I'm not supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the sake of repeating myself, I think that was a particularly poor presentation that we were given this evening. I'm very disappointed to it. It was all one-sided. We're being presented with an argument, and I fully endorse what's previously been said about the lack of funding. There's no cost-risk-benefit analysis that I can see. What are the risks being taken on? What happens if county council goes bust in 10 years' time? Where do all those responsibilities lie then? What happens? So I think, you know, I'm dead against it, and I hope this council represents that sort of view. I haven't heard one speaker in favour of the proposal yet, and I fully hope that the council leader, in collating those views, takes note of that. Thank you.
Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm unfortunately a veteran of quite a few rounds of trying to reorganise local government in the county and the region. You know, going back to the 1990s, we've seen various attempts to reorganise, to form unitary councils, to allegedly devolve more powers, to try and form regional assemblies. And all these things have actually not come about. And basically, they seem to have not come about because government has asked that we reach a degree of agreement within the county about how they ought to go. But no such agreement ever got arrived at, and governments changed and things were stopped and started. And really, I'd need to see something really dramatically advantageous. This is, there's nothing as to what the district's involvement will be in this really. The county council members have got no obligation to take any notice of what we've said. They're going to make the decision. So if the district can't see what's in it for us and isn't going to be able to take the decision either, then it's probably nearly time to move to the next business, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, Chair. There seems to be a common theme here. I'm also have great concerns. Given that we've just been told that the issues relating to governments are still being looked at, is it right that the deal has gone out to public consultation before they've been resolved? I question whether if the public hasn't got the whole picture, how can they decide? I also understand that there's scope for a populist figure who doesn't know the area to suddenly become its leader, which gives me great concern. Thank you.
Yeah, in principle, I'm massively in favour of the idea of some form of devolution, taking power away from central government and giving it to local government. I don't really recognise this as a devolution deal at all. It's a special sort of grant funding deal. And I think most residents are really concerned about the fact that local government spending has been squeezed by over 20% since 2010, and they're really worried about the core services being delivered properly. At the moment, we're incredibly short of money. There's a chaotic annual spending round. It's all a complete mess, and that needs to be sorted before anything else is done. I want to say 30 seconds on the leader idea. I'm really worried about the practical issues of having, if you take Andy Street and Andy Burnham, they're sitting above the fray of a local authority. This is combining two jobs. And having a first past the post system of electing the leader is almost guaranteed to have somebody getting that post with less than 50% of the vote. And then the next day saying, well, I represent the whole of Suffolk. So I think it's heading for a mess.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. Are there any further? Councillor Linder.
Thank you, Chair. I take the view that it's clear that a lot of you think that this is too little money and the need for money is much greater. However, I think if you can't have it all, it's better to have something than nothing. And also, I notice that you think Conservative governments might prevail for the future, and you might be more optimistic than I am personally on that regard. So we will have different governments over the 30 coming years, and Conservatives will come, Labour will come and go. I think we'll have to acknowledge some degree of trust in various forthcoming, oncoming governments in the future too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Linder. Are there any more points anyone would like to make? Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. My own view is that this whole idea of having a debate and, in inverted commas, collating the views of the council was a big mistake. I mean, we talk about the silent majority. I mean, I'm the 9th person to stand up, I suspect, out of the 26 here. Probably less than 13 will stand up. So, in other words, there'll be a silent majority even in this council. I think personally, I think the presentation was well done. And they answered quite a lot of questions. I think what we should have done is then move to having a sort of like a discussion, you know, the sort of discussion with sort of flip charts breaking into groups and teasing out all these issues rather than just relying on several people standing up. I mean, my summary of it all, I think, you know, in terms of the devolution group, if I had to collate views into a short sentence, it would be, well, it's a start. But I think a lot of the points I've heard, I quite agree with in terms of not a lot of money. You know, 16 million now, not index linked, is worth actually about 9 million at 2%, or 7 million at 3% inflation over the 30 years. So each year it's going to decline. But the other concern I have really is there's 80,000 residents we're supposed to be representing. There's 800,000 plus, I think, in Suffolk. You know, as a consultation, everybody's got a right to put their view forward. It just feels that we here have been given two rights, a double dip. We can go into the consultation as individuals, but somehow we're sort of also getting these views put forward as Mid-Suffolk District Council, a collation of views. And that just seems to me as if, you know, unlike most of the public, we're having sort of two bites to cherry, and maybe something on the town council will have even a third bite. But say, I think in summary, I think it's the start, but certainly so many of the concerns I've heard all around, you know, resonate with me. Thank you.
The Whitehead. Have we got any further points? Councillor, would you like to just respond and sum that up before?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that across the districts and boroughs in Suffolk, some have chosen not to debate this. Some have chosen to debate and come to a single view. We took, I think, the middle path of simply trying to debate the issue and collate those views. I hope that will work. I think it seemed to be a reasonable compromise. I'm grateful to all those who have taken the opportunity to make their points. I will attempt to collate those views into some sort of coherent document with officers' help, but I'm also willing to hear from members who haven't spoken and perhaps members who weren't able to be here this evening on email if they'd like to do that. And whatever I collate, I will circulate it to the other groups before submitting. But I hope this has been some sort of use as part of this process, and we can move on to other business now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mellon. I will now ask the Assistant Manager Governance to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Sorry, Councillor Lawrence. You're full. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 26 votes for. That's carried.
That is carried, yes. So, someone like to get Councillor Hicks back?
Councillor Hammond's told him.
Councillor. To item 10, MC 2345, Community Infrastructure Levy, SIL. This is the 6th review, March 2024. I'd like to invite Councillor Andrew Stringer, Cabinet Member for Heritage, Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce paper MC 2345 and to move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Chair. A huge pleasure to introduce the report this evening on our SIL expenditure framework. First of all, I've got a few thank yous to make. I'd like to thank the panel that oversaw tonight's report. Sarah Mansell, Keith Scarf, David Bradbury and James Caston. Thank you very much for doing 6 meetings in round about a fortnight. That was really, really good. If we can get all of our committees to work like that, that'd be remarkable. We could do all of our planning decisions for a year in a week. No, I'm not proposing we're going to do that. But thank you for doing that, and thank you for taking all of that time and having what looked like a really lively debate, looking at the report that's then come from it. SIL all along was one of those interesting areas of gathering money and then redistributing it, giving some to parish councils. If you had a neighbourhood plan, you got a bit more. And it was always going to be interesting where the money got steered and how it got spent. And it would take very well-informed staff and alert staff to make sure that all of it gets spent really, really well. And I think to date, we've done a brilliant job. I'd like to thank the staff for implementing the SIL framework that we have. But of course, it's going to need to evolve. Almost year on year, it will need to evolve because there'll be different needs and different aspirations and also different levels of SIL funding. I think it's important to state right now that there was always a worry and a concern that SIL, and the word, stressing the C word, the community part of it, might get eclipsed by the infrastructure part of it, i.e. that governments might support. Actually, we could get more and more of these people to use SIL to do the stuff that other agencies and other part of the planning process should do. So it's important that we evolve the document and keep it focused on what our communities really need. And to that end, I'd like to thank the staff for the report. I think it's one of the clearest reports I've ever seen. And some interesting changes, some really interesting changes. You know, community cafes, churches, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's a really interesting direction. And it'd be really interesting to see those bids come forward and how we align those funds. So happy to move the recommendation in the report from 3.1 to 3.6. Look for a seconder and happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mansell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to questions. Do we have questions for Councillor Stringer? No questions? As we have no questions, we'll move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to... Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Linda.
The trigger here. I'm thinking of page 26, where it says about extension improvement for publicly owned buildings. Does that also include repairs of those buildings? I'm thinking of council of village halls and the like, and would they need a roof replacement, for instance? That would cost a great lot of money, particularly for smaller parishes. So could SIL money like this be allocated to such an end? That's my question.
Thank you, Councillor Linda. I think it's as a principle that if it would be classed as maintenance, it wouldn't be covered by SIL. It's about new community infrastructure and not just repairing infrastructure that already exists. But of course there could be, and there has been, some interesting wiggles around that where a worn out roof has perhaps been then replaced by an extension to a building. And of course the extension, because it is new, could well encompass some of that work. So technically replacing something that's worn out and needs maintenance is not covered by SIL. It's about new infrastructure. Having said that, it doesn't stop our communities being incredibly creative, and long may that continue.
We just have to build a lean-to to the community hall. That's it. Thank you.
Nope. Right, let's move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who would like to? Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. I think actually technically we're voting on 3.4 to 3.6. But anyhow, as a member of the panel, I found it fascinating actually, the review of SIL and the kinds of questions that we had thrown at us and the kinds of background information that the officers gave us in order to make an informed decision. There was certainly a lot of debate within that member panel from both Baber and Mid-Suffolk members about the direction of SIL, and I really do welcome that. And one thing in particular that I drew from it and actually took to my own town council was the parish investment infrastructure plan, and actually Stonemarket Town Council are now about to do one of those. So I thought it was a very good process and really a good example of how SIL can benefit a district. I know not all districts actually operate SIL, so I think really commendation really to Mid-Suffolk that we did actually adopt SIL and that we have got a really strong framework for developing a really good district.
Have any further points anyone would like to make? Councillor Mansell.
Well, if no one else is going to say anything, I too think that the way that the SIL working group got on with the work is actually really good, because it's a very short space of time. You don't forget what was said in the previous meeting, so you don't spend half of the next meeting discussing what you'd already talked about at the previous meeting. So I think it's a much more productive way of working for that project. And I think we do have the basis of a good framework already. And I think it's great that as I think it's item 3.6 that we're voting on, that we carry on and have an ongoing review, because things do change. And a lot of the questions that we discussed this round were because of parishes or infrastructure projects coming forward that were sort of outside of the boxes that we'd previously had, and we wanted to discuss whether we could carry on doing that, or whether, I mean, every case is going to be an individual case when we've got a large community infrastructure project, and it's really hard to put down hard and fast rules because every project's going to be different, but we do have to have a framework, and I think we need that flexibility of the framework so that we can adapt for our communities to make sure that they do get the best option to use that funding. So yeah, and I think the report is great because we've got that summary on pages 26 and 27 of all the changes, because it is quite complicated, but to save you having to read the whole document about what's changed, we've got that summary, and I hope it all makes sense. The fact that we didn't have any, we had one question, I thought was great. It obviously is a clear report. So yes, I'm in favour of this, and I hope that the rest of the councillors will be in favour of this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to officers and members for this report. It might seem that as this is a sixth review that we're constantly in some kind of review period, so I suspect officers are now thinking, right, we've got to start working on the seventh review. But I think the point of that is that I think things change, and we need to always keep up with changing circumstances, what communities want to see, what communities are doing, and different organisations. And so I think it's really important that we do effectively almost keep this under review, as it were, to reflect those views of our wider communities. And I think also one of the key things for me is ensuring that parishes, town councils and parish councils are really aware of what can be covered within the SIL, and within this document there are the details of various liaison meetings and training sessions, And I think it's beholden on all of us as councillors to actually encourage parishes and groups to actually go to those sessions and to understand what they can apply for, because we want to get this money spent and want to get it out there and working in our communities. And the final point I'd like to make, Chair, is just that where the community feels that they can't be eligible for SIL as per our current requirements, the grants team at Mid Suffolk, and in conjunction with the SIL team, do a great job of actually signposting organisations to different areas where they can get other types of funding. And so there is always another opportunity to find funding if it's not available here. But I'll be supporting this, and I think it's a great piece of work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Caston.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Christine Thurlow for navigating us through this, and your team, but Christine was absolutely fantastic, taking us through a subject that was there was so much work to do. It had to be done in a short space of time, and she did an absolutely amazing job. But the councillors on there were fantastic as well, because it wasn't always easy making decisions in those meetings. There's a lot of very hard decisions had to be made, and there's a lot of discussion about them. And the councillors really did care deeply about what they were doing and had such a good knowledge of how that would affect communities and assets and how that delivers infrastructure. I'm happy to be involved again if it looks as though I could be by this paper, but I just can't believe it looks like 6 years since SIL came in, and I remember the actual conversations when SIL was coming in about what it would do to house prices, whether it would lock up land, whether we'd fall behind with development, and none of that seemed to actually come into, well, the house prices have gone up, but I don't think that's been because of SIL. But it's done a great deal of good, a huge amount of good. We can see the things that's delivered, and also the neighbourhood SIL that the parish councils have got. They've used it for some fantastic projects, and it's really empowered parish councils to do the right thing. But it's right that we keep it evolving, and we keep looking at that. There are hard decisions in here, but there's also some really good ones, and I'm really proud of some of the things that came out of that. So I urge you all to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caston, for the historical perspective. Thank you. Do we have any further points anyone would like to make? I'm going to ask Councillor Stringer to sum up, please, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief, which is a first. Apologies for accidentally trying to annex another authority when I moved the motion. It should have been 3.4 to 3.6. I do not have authority over Baber District Council yet. Just wanted to mentioning, we're also at the moment doing work on the charging schedule for SIL, and there should be some documents coming out later in the spring where we're reviewing to make sure that is sustainable and at the correct level and not prohibiting development, etc., etc. So there'll be a paper coming out on that. And also, just to say how I think what's been really remarkable about SIL, obviously most of us in rural patches, how it's almost changed the conversation with the public, with parish councils about doing projects. It's almost like they've been, some of them, self-empowered. Because rather than, we'll have to get a grant for this, and will we get one for that? I'm not really sure. Suddenly, well, actually, we've got some SIL, so we could be working on this already. So it's almost energised communities to actually start getting moving and actually delivering stuff for their communities at almost a devolved level, which is remarkable and brilliant, and thanks to everyone around it. One big message I would put out there for us and also for our communities is to please spend it as soon as you possibly can. Not because I want you to throw money away, but because I don't want to give any of this back anywhere. And I also want to make sure that money is out there working for those communities. Because if your projects aren't moving forward and getting delivered, then they aren't doing that work for our communities. Just having it in a reserve at a parish council or town council is not helping. So we need to then make the projects work correctly, and they need to be costed correctly. We do not want it's sitting there. We want that money out there, doing the work for our communities, and also investing in our local economy, if at all possible. Happy to support the motion. Hope everyone does. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. I will now ask the Assistant Manager, Governance, to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 20 votes for. That's carried.
Thank you very much.
27? Did I not say 27? Did I? I do apologise. There's 27 votes for. That's carried.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll now, just like the office, I think we'll now just have a very, very brief comfort break, please. 5 or 6 minutes, chance to replenish your glasses. And, sorry, Councillor Hicks, you're on the move again. A little bell to ring first so you can get your drinks done, then sit down. We're now moving to item 11. This is MC 2346, Joint Homelessness Reduction and Rough Sleeping Strategy. I'd like to invite Councillor Richard Winch, Cabinet Member for Housing and Property, to introduce paper MC 2346 and to move the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Councillor Winch.
We're required to review our homelessness strategy every 5 years, and this is the result of that review, which has been through all the normal council processes, overview and scrutiny, and has been out for public consultation. I think the strategy is very clearly laid out, and I think the 5 priorities are very clearly set, and there's an awful lot of background blurb in the papers. What I thought I'd do now is just try and put the strategy into a bit of context, and then for each one of the 5 priorities say why we think it's a priority. So just for context, I find looking at a lot of the housing information quite confusing to try and get a handle on exactly what's going on. So in my head, there's 4 categories of homelessness. Number 1 is rough sleeping, which is what we all traditionally think of as homelessness. Then there's what you might call statutory homelessness, so that's people who are in local authority temporary accommodation. Then we've got what you might call hidden homelessness, so people are sofa surfing, sleeping in cars and things. And then we've got people who are at risk of becoming homeless at any moment. So you've got 4 categories, and when you look at the statistics, we're sometimes mixing and matching those. So the most obvious thing that you'll notice if you go onto any of the websites like Crisis or Shelter or the government website is that this is a problem that is increasing in England. Or in the UK, in fact, but the stats are done separately for different countries. So in England, we've seen a significant increase in rough sleeping over the last 15 years, and on one night every year, there's a survey done counting rough sleepers, and the survey 23 versus 22 showed a 27% increase in rough sleeping. You're also seeing a huge increase in expenditure by local authorities on temporary accommodation. So I think in the last 5 years, that's increased by about 62%, so a very significant increase. And Crisis estimate that we've got about 250,000 people in the worst kind of homeless accommodation. So they're either rough sleeping, or they're in sofa surfing, or in very unsatisfactory bed and breakfast accommodation. So we've got, as a society, quite a significantly increasing problem. Where does Mid-Suffolk fit into that? So Suffolk itself is in the bottom 40% in terms of social deprivation. So we don't have the same problems that some parts of the country have, and there's a lot of variation within Suffolk. But Mid-Suffolk is still seeing these increases. So I think in the papers it says something like, in terms of homelessness applications, they've gone from the year before last 510, last year 588, and we've processed more than 700 this year. So you're seeing that increase. Seeing the same thing with rough sleeping, not large numbers, but an increase. Now, obviously, all of those cases don't necessarily lead into the council having to do extra work, but each one has to be investigated and assessed whether we have a responsibility for them or not. So we're seeing within Mid-Suffolk those increases. So I just wanted to go through the 5 priorities. So priority number 1 is called something like early and upstream prevention and intervention and prevention. What does that mean? That means trying to stop homelessness happening in the first place. And it's obvious that that's to everyone's benefit from the point of view of the individual or the family. We don't want them to get in a homeless situation. It's also by far the cheapest way of solving the problem. How do we know who's out there? Sometimes we get referrals from individuals, we get referrals from partner agencies, people who are coming out of prison, people are coming out of hospital. So the idea is to get to individuals before they get into the situation, either keep them in their current accommodation, so that means working with them to see how we can keep them there, or rapidly rehousing them. And I think the figures in the paper are saying that we've prevented homelessness since 2019 to 23 in roughly 550 cases, and we've urgently rehoused people in roughly 250 cases. and at the moment we have 300 open cases. Making rough sleeping rare, brief and non-recurring. This is about getting to a rough sleeper within 24 hours with outreach care, getting them into a hospital, into a hostel. We've helped since 2020, 37 former rough sleepers have secured long-term accommodation. And that count that I said that was done nationally, there was only one rough sleeper in Mid-Suffolk. The third priority is about ensuring the health and well-being of anybody going into temporary accommodation. And I don't know if people saw the panorama earlier this week, but there was a mum and 2 young kids in a room. There's no fridge, there's no facilities. You know, it is really heartbreaking to see. So it's about working with individuals and families to try and support them in this situation. At the moment, 33% of the people we've got in temporary accommodation are children. There's no children in bed and breakfast type accommodation, but it's still a very significant number. We are, it's outside of this strategy, but I know officers are working on this, and it's something administration's interested in, is can we provide further temporary accommodation so that we've got more flexibility for temporary housing people. The fourth priority, which interestingly enough, if you look at the feedback from the consultation, wasn't greeted with particular enthusiasm, is about expanding the role of Central Suffolk Letting. So this is the service that we offer that works with private landlords to try and secure a tenancy for somebody who needs somewhere to live. I think I'm strongly in favour of this because it's just being practical with the resources that we've got. In the long term, we need more social housing to solve this problem, but this is something that we can do, and since 2020, we've provided 108 new homes, so not an insignificant number. And the final issue is around the general cost of living crisis and what we can do about this. So this is the category of people, really, before they become immediately at risk. There's a lot of people just getting by at the moment. This is a really complicated area with loads of different grants, agencies to work with, partners to work with, and it requires us to get our minds around all of this. As an administration, as a separate issue, we're looking for what else we can do to help our community with the cost of living. In conclusion, I'd really like to thank Amma and her team for putting together what I find, I'm very simple. I think like things laid out very clearly. I think the strategy is laid out very clearly. But I'd also like to thank her team for all the work that they're doing day to day with all the individuals that come within their service. It sometimes gets hidden from all of us going about our day-to-day activities, but I'd really like us to thank the whole team for what they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose, very much so.
Thank you, Councillor.
Second, sorry.
We'll now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. And we've also got Amma, who's the head of Housing Solutions, and I believe we're going to be joined online by Deborah, the Director of Housing Solutions. Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
A person-centred approach to this, and there's lots of good bits to it. I have a question about how we ask for equality information, because on page 193, which is in the Baber and Mid-Suffolk District Council Homelessness Review 2023, there's a bit which has gender of main applicant and has female, male and transgender as a gender, and transgender isn't a gender. So it would be kind of having male, female and like other genders, and then a bit saying transgender and cisgender. So I'm kind of, how do we collect it, and would we be updating that going forward to be more in line with our person-centred approach?
Thank you. Councillor Winch, would you like to...
What I'd like to suggest is that I take that away as a separate issue, but I think we should have consistency across all the reporting that we deal with, and we need to take into account the issues that have been raised by Councillor Rowe. So I will talk to Emma about this afterwards.
Right. Do you have a supplementary to that, Councillor Rowe?
No, that's fine answer.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
I would also like to thank the department and those officers like Richard did in appreciation of the very hard work under what it must be very trying circumstances trying to match all this. I do my best to recognise that. What I'd like to know is how is it determined for the location of houses of multiple occupancy, where they will be sited and the numbers in those houses? How is that considered? Is it considered on the basis of a landlord letting their property and making it available, or is an impact assessment done on the impact likely on the residents local to it? Thank you.
I'm probably going to pass this over to Emma, but I think it's a combination of the two, locality and taking into the needs of each individual. But Emma, do you?
This is dealt with by the private sector housing team, and that is usually dealt with by landlords approaching, and they follow the legislation, what they're requiring, and I would have to take that away and go back to the team and ask them what that process actually looks like and come back to you.
Thank you, officer. Councillor Hicks, yes, I do beg your pardon.
Thank you. I know I wasn't here for the whole meeting, so maybe that was why. Can I just ask, obviously, thank you for the paper. You mentioned about looking after those that are just getting by and the importance of that. So as the Green administration has put up council rents by 7.7%, you've put up utility charges by 44%, and you've actually put up sheltered housing surcharges. The Green administration put that up by 18%. That's a big increase for those that are just getting by, that you have imposed on those residents. So will you now go away and just make sure that particular set are, well looked after in case they find they're no longer able to pay those increased bills that you've surcharged on them?
We were very conscious about the fact that we've done that. We believe we've done that for good reasons, but we are about to announce some remedial action in this area because we agree it's very important that we do that. I don't want to go into that now because that needs to come out as a complete package, but there will be something coming very soon.
Thank you, Chair. Probably a question for Emma. Do we know the figures for homeless veterans? Because I know in the wider UK that it's a demographic of the country that is disproportionately represented in the homeless community. So do we? I had a look through the papers, but I couldn't actually see a specific one for sort of homeless veterans. Thank you.
We do collect that information. I don't have it to hand, but I can get that forward that on to you.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if it would be a good idea to conduct these reviews more frequently than every 5th year, given how fast circumstances tend to change. That's one question. Another question is, when I read through the case reports in this study, and it strikes me that quite frequently there is a mother alone with children and she's in dire straits. Is there any possibility of chasing up the dads in these circumstances and try to get them to assume their responsibilities? So those are my two questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think the first question, that the 5 years is when we're required to review this. I think that because we know that the demand is growing, we really need to keep an eye on this and make sure that we don't get into difficulty. So I think there would always be an oversight to just check that it's still relevant. Your second question is a bit more tricky because often the mother wouldn't want contact with the partner, etc., and it's moving quite away from what our responsibilities are as a district council, I think. So I think it would only be done if that was for the individual was asking us to help in that way. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be going there.
Thank you. No. Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, we will now move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. If anyone would like to start. Councillor Elkin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a very brief comment just to say thank you really to the housing team. I've had a number of residents who have been at risk of homelessness for different complicated reasons, and the housing team has been really fantastic and gone above and beyond, you know, what I've called them at, you know, the end of the day. They've stayed late and they've helped and they've resolved things for people. So it was just a thank you really from me, and I'll be very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very well put together report and strategy paper, and I think a lot of thought has gone into it. It's very clear. I like the 5 priorities and the way that the strategy is going to meet those priorities. So I will be supporting this, and I hope others in this chamber will also be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Caston.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's obviously the different people become homeless, different from different backgrounds, but there's also 2 different types of homelessness. There's the people we know about and there's the people we don't know about. And there's very little we can do about the sofa surfers and the people in conditions that aren't acceptable. They might as well be homeless. But I believe this does the best we can do for the ones we can get to. 24 hours for outreach people to get there is pretty good. The Councillor Pratchett said about the homeless veterans, and I don't know what that figure is, but it won't be proportionate, and it will be really shocking because it's a massive problem with ex-service people. That's you know, that's for sure. That's everywhere. The team are fantastic because we had this in scrutiny, and no matter how far you research, how deeply you dive into it, they're already doing it. They've already got something in place for it, and you know that goes ever such a long way. But these are really complex cases, and you know, my heart goes out to these people that have got into this position, because it is so difficult once they get to that position. It's so hard to get out, and hopefully the council will be working behind the scenes. So we do have proportionately a low amount of homelessness, but I think a lot of that's to do with the good work that goes on here. So I'll definitely be supporting this. It's something that we need to keep a really close eye on, because it could very quickly go into a crisis. It would happen so quickly, but I'm full confidence with the team. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to commend everyone involved in producing this joint homelessness reduction and rough sleeping strategy. Personally, having spent several years, around 2010, volunteering for a charity in London who provided outreach services like soup kitchens and warm spaces, it was apparent at the time that local authority infrastructure lacked the attention to detail we see in this strategy. Labour and Mid Suffolk is consistently commended for the support it provides to homeless individuals and those facing an imminent housing crisis. This strategy ensures that trend continues of offering early intervention. I'm sure this will also be welcomed by the voluntary and charitable sector who support. With the cost of living crisis growing, I feel that we must not forget that many of our residents are now only one job loss away from falling into a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Sobering thoughts. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very briefly. I will certainly be supporting the policy. I do hope that the media will pick up and use the wealth of information about what homelessness is actually like, and I think the Councillor Winch's opening remarks were very clear, you know, that they will use that information to better explain to the public what homelessness is all about and what you know, what some of their council tax money is spent on. Frankly, it's not just opening those proverbial, emptying those bins. It is things like this that pick up the people who literally fall by the wayside. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any further? Councillor Lawrence.
I'm afraid I'm a little bit concerned in the implementation of the delivery plan, particularly in regard of houses of multiple occupation, while accepting that all communities should take a fair share of their responsibilities in this respect. I note that Stowmarket has one house of multiple occupation of 3 persons. And in the delivery schedule here, Needham Market is proposed to have 2 homes of 5 multiple persons, a total of 10. To me, I would consider that this disproportionate, hence my earlier question, has the impact on the locations in the communities these homes of multiple occupation being considered and have. So in that respect, I'm afraid I will not be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do you have further comments? Councillor Winch, I would like to ask you to sum up then, please.
Well, I'm going to change my summary because I was about to say I've got the impression that this has got strong support from everyone in the room. So all I could say to Councillor Lawrence is that is an issue that we would take away and have a serious look at. So we're not going to ignore what you're saying. So I hope you will find it upon yourself in the round for the whole thing, because I think this is such a big thing for our community that you could find yourself to vote for it. But if I can just say, I hope everyone will give this their support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. I'll now ask the Assistant Manager of Governance to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 26 votes for and 1 against. So that's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Now, we now move to item 12, MC 2347, Community Governance Review, Battisford and Coombs. I'd like to invite Councillor Adrian Marriott to introduce paper MC 2347 and to move the recommendations in the report.
There we go. In March 2022, the Council tasked the previous Community Governance Review Working Group to undertake a district-wide review, a statutory duty the Council is advised to exercise every 10 to 15 years. 2 of the requests received included proposals to amend local boundaries, where we needed to meet the requirements of the Local Government Boundary Commission for England in terms of consultation. As matters required further consultation, a second stage to the review was conducted in 23-24 by the current working group. From the initial stage 2 consultation, we made draft recommendations which were sent out to residents and stakeholders for their views. As stated within the consultation report in Appendix B, the Battisford and Coombs Community Governance Review achieved a response rate of 21.98% of all households consulted, translating to 140 responses. The report today contains the final recommendations of the working group in Appendix A, based upon the further consultation to move the Bowl Meadow development into the Battersford administrative and electoral area, and to propose no change to the current arrangements for Bilderston Road. As representative of the current working group, I'm happy to propose the recommendations outlined in the report, and I ask for a seconder.
Councillor Linders. Would you like to second it? Thank you very much, Councillor Linders.
Yes, I will be very pleased to second this. It's been a very thorough consultation, including an on-site visit by the group, and also then, as you pointed out, succeeded by consultations where you have to say the vast majority of people were in favour of this, and none of the parish councils were against, and Battersford was in favour. So I would urge you all to carry this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We'll now move to questions, and we have David Connors, the Head of Elections and Land Charges, and Patrick Richardson Todd to answer any questions which may be of a technical nature. Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions about the recommendations on page 257. I don't quite understand. In 3.1, we've got a recommendation to adopt the final recommendation to the Community Governance Review Group. Item 3.3 is to publish them to allow for a further period of comments before the decision is taken by Council. Are we not taking a decision now? Or I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a mismatch between that. And my other question is, in item 3.1, we're going to use Appendix A, and I just hope that the errors, I've just spotted an error on the table at 1.11 on page 267. I think the two columns about the number of electors and the number of members needs to be transposed. So I'm hoping that before anything's published, that those and any other errors are corrected.
Yes, certainly. So in terms of your first question regarding the recommendations, so when this was first brought to Council in 23, I believe, Council reserved the right to approve the recommendations. So hence it has to come now for the recommendations to be published for one final comment, and then it will come back to Council again after that final comment for it to be implemented. So it's a two-stage process, so it'll have to come to Council again, so you will see something very similar again at some point to say any final comments that have been passed. And yes, thank you for highlighting that it's unlikely to have a parish council with circa 400 elected members and only 7 electors. Actually, everyone missed that from the very first report, that table was in many councils ago, so we will correct those errors before any further publication of that report. Thank you, Councillor.
Officer. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. Technical question. It relates to the paragraph 6.4.2. Because as I understand it, these people who are presently in Coombs are moving to Battersford, so they're changing parish. I think they're also changing ward from Wunness to Battersford and Ringhall. But 6.42 says that they'll still remain in Bury St Edmunds and Stowmarket constituency, yet the rest of Battersford are in Central Suffolk and North Ipswich. So in an election where, say, it's district or parish or council combines with a national election, am I right in thinking that these few people will actually get 2 electoral cards saying go to one place for national and go to another place to vote locally, which seems rather clumsy? Is that right?
So your interpretation of the boundaries is correct, yes. So those 12 properties will form their own polling district for that very reason, because the parliamentary boundary will cross the new, assuming the recommendations are approved. So assuming this moves into the parish of Battersford and the district boundaries are changed, they will be in separate parliamentary constituencies. In reality, no, they are unlikely to be sent to a different polling station. It's just at the polling station where they are sent to, they will be issued with a ballot paper for the correct parliamentary constituency in which they live, because the registers will accurately reflect the parliamentary constituencies in which they live.
So if I understand you right, there'll be a ballot box which will never have more than 12 ballot papers in it. Just could be separate ballot boxes in, say, Battersford for those few that have come from Coombs. Is that right?
In a parliamentary election, yes.
Thank you, officer. Any further questions? I think we can move to debate. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chair. As the Ward for Battersford, I would like to thank the Community Governance Review Working Group for all their hard work and effort that they've put into this, and the officers too. I'm pleased with the findings and support their recommendations. I think what we need to highlight is that there has been a very strong consensus from the community, as has been alluded to. Over 88% of respondents in favour of moving the boundary to include Bowl Meadow within the village of Battersford. Residents of Bowl Meadow are, in terms of proximity, very much part of the Battersford community in the village, very close to the Battersford's pub and other local facilities. It will really focus a sense of identity and place within Bowl Meadow. The boundary change will also align residents as electors in district, county, parish council elections, and hopefully following the next parliamentary boundary review, also parliamentary elections as well. So Battersford has a really strong sense of community, and the boundary change will really strengthen that sense of place within Battersford for the residents of Bowl Meadow. So please support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any further comments? Oh, right. Councillor Marriott, would you like to sum up?
Well,
beg your pardon, not yet. Well, have we got anyone who'd like to make some points in the debate? I know. Any further points? Any further? Councillor Marriott, would you sum up, please?
Well, I ask that you support the findings here, as Councillor Pratt just said. The findings from the consultations were quite conclusive, particularly with regard to the moving of the Bowl Meadow development and keeping Bilderston within Coombs. Certainly there was a majority for that as well, and I think all of the residents are happy with the outcome if we were to support these recommendations. So I ask that you do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now ask the Assistant Manager Governance to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That is 27 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. I'm now moving to item 13. I'd like to invite the interim monitoring officer to introduce paper MC 2348.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. The Council's permanent Section 151 officer is currently on a period of long-term absence, and during that period, Miss Watling has been covering this post as the interim corporate manager for finance. Because there is uncertainty of when the Director of Corporate Resources will be able to return full-time to her post, it's felt prudent to appoint Miss Watling as the Section 151 officer until that officer can return on a full-time basis. Thank you, Chair.
Could I have a proposal, please? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy to propose the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2 of this report. It is, as the paper says, it is a legal requirement that we have a Section 151 officer in place. I'm pleased that one of our interim officers, Karen Watling, has got the expertise and experience to fulfil this role. So very pleased that she can do that, and wish Melissa Evans well in her recovery, and hope to see her back when she's able to. Thank you, Chair. And I'd ask for a seconder, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that and fully endorse Councillor Eburn's comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions before I move straight to the vote? I will now ask the Assistant Manager Governance to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 20 votes for. That's 27 votes for. That's carried. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm now moving to item 14, MC 2349. I would like to invite Councillor Mellon, Leader of the Council, to introduce paper MC 2349 and to move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to introduce this paper and to propose the recommendations in the report. The councils are required to produce a pay policy statement for each financial year under Section 38(1) of the Localism Act 2011. Now, Baber and Mid-Suffolk District Councils have a single organisational structure with harmonised pay, grades, terms and conditions of service, and we have a single pay policy statement which covers both councils. And the pay policy statement being recommended for adoption is Appendix A. It starts on page 318 of your papers. Members from the previous council term will remember this is the culmination of a long process. For new councillors, I will cover it just briefly. In 2022, we started the process of reviewing the pay of senior officers, but it was decided at that time to avoid complication and exclude the chief executive's salary from that process. When the recommendations from that senior staff salary review came to council, it was agreed that it was only fair that all staff salaries were reviewed within a year. Now that work was completed last year, and so completing the review of the chief executive's salary is the final piece of work so that all salaries in the organisation have been reviewed. And this process has involved engaging external help through the East of England Local Government Association to benchmark and compare with other councils in the same situation as us. Now, members should note that paragraph 1.9 in Appendix A, that's top of page 319, our lowest paid workers are in grade 2 pay band. Also to note that our apprentices are paid a rate higher than the minimum wage, and that helps us to attract and retain apprentices in the organisation. Now, nationally, it's recommended that the ratio of lowest paid to highest paid employee is no more than 1 to 12. Our council policy is that this ratio should be no more than 1 to 8. And in fact, these proposals give a ratio of around 1 to 7. You can see that on paragraph 1.15. Also, just need to note that the Chief Executive has recently revised the structure of the senior leadership team, and these changes result in a saving of up to 118,000K across both councils. So I would like us to approve the pay policy statement as set out in Appendix A, and we also need to note the report on the gender pay gap, which is published each year, and we also need to note the payment rates for election duties set out in Appendix C, and these rates are set for us by the government. A note of caution for members wishing to debate this item: when we're discussing the Chief Executive's salary, please be aware we are not talking about the remuneration for or the performance of a particular person. This is the pay rate for the role of Chief Executive, and were we to need to recruit a new Chief Exec at some point in the future, we would need to offer a salary which has kept pace with others elsewhere. So I'm happy to propose these recommendations, and I look for a seconder. Thank you, Chair. Deputy Chair.
Thank you. The Chair has just had to take a call at the moment due to a family-related issue. He may come back. We'll just continue with proceedings. Yes, Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to second this report and echo the comments that Councillor Mellon has made. I think it's very important to note that the rates of pay, particularly so for apprenticeships, which are well above the cost of living wage, and the fact that our ratio in terms of between the chief exec's pay and the lowest paid is well within the national multiplier for that. This is something that the annual pay policy is something that comes around each year, but we have been significantly out of step with regards to reviewing the chief executive's pay, and I think it's very, very important that obviously we to approve both of these in this one paper today, and I will hope that everyone in this chamber will support that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we will now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Councillor Hicks.
Thanks. Can I just check? I apologise if I've missed it. Is the gender pay gap coming back to this for the next meeting, the full report? I may need to ask officers just to confirm on that.
No, the gender pay gap report doesn't have to come to council, but we do have to publish it by the 31st of March. So the report will be published on that date, but in advance of that it will be circulated to members, and it will be discussed at the annual presentation that the Chief Exec makes to members regarding staff.
Yes, sure.
Is it not good practice to debate that in the chamber and just for it to be aired publicly? Because it is a very important document, and obviously that gap, I'm sure, will be narrowing.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. Sorry. So from a governance type of view, it doesn't have to, but you know, it's whether we choose to, and on this occasion we have chosen not to take that forward, but it will be circulated to councillors for them to be able to comment. It might be something that we look at going forward, whether we do bring that back.
Any more questions? Okay, so as the questions are finished, we'll now move to debate. Councillors will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. All right. Councillor Pratchett.
Thank you, Deputy Vice Chair, Assistant Chair, Deputy Chair. So if you look at Appendix B, if you look at where we are, if we sit 6th out of 14th, you could argue that the CEO is already being adequately remunerated. My worry with increasing the wage is that not only do you increase the threshold of then what everyone else can earn, is that you've increased people's expectations as well. Now, I didn't realise we were at this 1:8 ratio. You know, with the 1:12, it means that if you increase the CEO's wage, then eventually you're going to have to increase everyone else's wage. And I think our wage bill in Baber Mid Suffolk is already quite high. I think the public might be shocked to know sort of how much we actually spend on staff. So, you know, my main concern with this is that once you've raised that bar, you then can't lower it. And if we're having to match on the 1:8, then we are voting through huge down the line wage increases. So that's my concern with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Join the debate? Okay. Okay, thank you. I will now, Councillor Mellon, would you wish to add any, oh, sorry, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to point out from a different point of view that in order for us to be competitive in a market where skills are going down at the moment, and we're having to focus on how to upskill our adults and young people into good jobs and multi-skill them, that it is prudent of us to make sure that we pay our staff as much as possible. It is our staff that we're investing in to produce our high quality services. So unless we have good staff, we won't have good services.
Anything? Councillor Mellon, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to respond to a couple of points there. I think actually Councillor Hicks highlights a really important thing. We probably do need to bring that agenda report back to Council next year. On this occasion, it is important that we highlight the progress we're making in that area. In terms of the table in Appendix B, with the comparators with other councils, inevitably those sort of exercises are a snapshot in time, and within a month or two, those salaries in other places could have been reviewed upwards, and you're sort of behind again. But I think it's important that we do this exercise on a regular basis. We do want to retain staff, and there's so much important work going on at the council. At the moment, we're able to recruit and we're able to retain. If that started to change, I would be concerned about the delivery of our priorities, and that's really important. But I hope members will feel able to vote for this. We need to do this report every year, and we've got the extra information there as well, and I hope you can support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. I will now ask the Assistant Manager, Governance, to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you. Members, that vote is now in progress. May I take your vote?
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Hardingham?
I can't open the voting, but I'm in favour.
You're in favour, thank you. Thank you, members. That is 24 votes for, 1 vote against, and 1 abstention. Thanks.
That is carried. I now refer you to the appointments listed on the agenda and the update in the tabled papers. Are there any further changes to appointments? Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of extra ones to propose. Councillor Theresa Davis is going to take the position on the East Suffolk Water Management Board, what used to be called the Internal Drainage Board, replacing Councillor David Bradbury. And I want to also make one change to the Planning Committee. Councillor David Penny will step up from being a named sub to a full member of the committee, and Councillor Austin Davies will do the reverse. He'll go from being a full member to a named sub. Thank you. At 5:30 p.m, so the meeting is closed. Thank you.
Well done.